Hello, hopefully I'm live now. Let me just draw a line under my title. A nice unstraight line there. Move my water. Put that over there, belongs that side. Everything feels a bit far away from me. That better? Probably. So yes, hello, sorry for not being here last Monday. Stuff cropped up at very, very short notice that I couldn't do anything about. And so I obviously did what I had to do. But we're hopefully back to normal today. Well, as normal as we can be. I'll try and get my yawning out the way now. So obviously I'm not going to talk about what the family stuff was because it doesn't just involve me. If it involved me, I couldn't care less. But when it involves others, obviously I'm not going to say about them. It was technically only a Monday and Tuesday thing, but the way my brain works meant that it kind of knocked me out and meant I didn't do any work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it kind of knocked me out for like 4 or 5 days afterwards of having to recover from 2 days of dealing with things. So hello, those of you who are joining over on the side at the live chat. And for those who don't know, I occasionally see comments from people saying, oh, I was there during your live stream, but I couldn't chat. Why couldn't I chat? If you are in that boat and you're on your mobile phone, I know, for example, if I'm on my mobile phone, by default, it doesn't have the chat on it. So it might do for some people if you often have the chat on, but for me, it doesn't by default have the chat on. So you have to kind of pop up the sort of options and click on the chat option to show the live chat if you're here thinking, how do I chat? So that's just because I think the last month or so, I've had about 3 or 4 comments, I think one on Facebook and a few on here, from people saying, oh, I keep wanting to contribute to the live streams and I can't. So that's how. If you're watching on TV, you can't. So a lot of live streams I watch are normally gaming live streams and things, and so I'll watch it on TV and I can't, it doesn't let you, it lets you see the chat. So the same sort of thing, pop the chat up on the screen on the TV. It can let you see the chat, but it doesn't let you type anything for the chat on, at least not on my TV. So yeah, so that's I have to do it on I have to silence the video on my mobile phone, have the video on my mobile phone with the chat on, and that's not happening now. Just suddenly got an Apple notification saying, we're about to update your computer. Do you want us to do that right now? No, remind me another day. So yeah, it's for that I have to, so for those of you who watch things on your TV and think, I can't seem to get the chat on the TV, it might be that you have to go on your mobile phone to engage in the chat and then but watch it on TV or whatever. That's what I do with things. So yeah, very annoying. I've used this computer to the point where, so off of charge, to the point where it went from 100% down to 1%, and then I ran into this room to quickly plug it in because I was in the middle of something. I've then used it this sort of later this afternoon, carrying on doing the same sort of stuff, but with it on charge in here. Not once, using it most of today, not once has this laptop, the MacBook Air, come up with a notification. But now I'm live, it wants to do an update and close my computer down. Fortunately, I'm able to see it. Oh yes, those with the little blue names and the little blue tools things, they are moderators. they're just because we've had one experience where we've had a couple of experiences. One where people were spamming the live chat with rubbish, and I was trying to deal with it on my own at the time, and so we thought, oh, maybe I should get some bouncers in to moderate the live chat. Some people who can wave their spanners around. So yeah, how this works is that for about 15 minutes or so, 15 more minutes or so, I will generally have a chat with you guys. That settles me into this, as well as giving people a chance to join and settle in yourselves. And then I will get ideas from you, just like single words, things like that I write down on here. And that's what I will then turn into whatever tonight's sleep meditation will be. Obviously, I didn't do one last week, and last week, so Wednesday, was the first week since 2015 that I've not posted a video on my YouTube channel. That I actually missed a video, and that's just because what happened tied up the sort of late afternoon, I don't know, 6 o'clock, whatever it was, that I got the phone call. It sort of tied up that time all through the evening, and then all into Tuesday and through 2/3 or so of Tuesday. And normally it would be during the evening in the run up to doing the live stream that I would edit Wednesday's video. And if I haven't, like tonight, I haven't finished editing Wednesday's video. So if I haven't finished editing it, then I carry on editing it on the Tuesday so that it's all done for the Wednesday. And so it was just bad timing that I didn't manage to do that, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm okay. I'm the same as normal. As mentioned at the start, it just kind of, my brain takes a while to recover. So it kind of knocked me out for a bit. I literally couldn't do any work, pretty much slept almost for most of like 5 days or something to recover. Thank you for liking the courses on Udemy. But yeah, fortunately, anyone would think I've dropped off the face of the earth. The number of comments I got, not on the video where I mentioned it, but on other videos, saying we need more stories. Why have you not done any more new stories? And it was literally like, I missed one story. That's it. Missed one story, and that's enough to have had lots of comments on lots of my different videos saying, why aren't you posting any new stories? And I had a video that actually explained that, why I wasn't doing that. Abby might be watching this now. But yeah, so it's obviously good to be back. It just meant I had the same reaction as I normally do. Oh, I've got to be live at 10. But that's normal. That's kind of, you know, you're working late at night. It's not a big deal. But yes, and thank you everyone for joining me back here. Obviously, there's always that kind of risk that you miss a week and everyone kind of forgets about you. So I'm glad that hasn't happened. It's nice to see people knocking around here. So for those of you that sort of think Abby's my wife. So for those of you who kind of have probably noticed that I have talked about how I didn't post the Wednesday video, but I also didn't post a video on the Saturday, which I have been doing. I've always talked about it as being my bonus video, but I just didn't post it. But that's because I decided that now David has got a bit more free time to post on the Mind Changers YouTube channel, I've decided that hopefully I'm in a position to post that if I give up 1 week here, one video here that I've been doing as a bonus video every week and post on the Mind Changers channel instead, maybe I can then do something over there. So I've already scheduled the first video, which goes live on Sunday, and David is going to do his final one in his current series the Sunday after, and then I'll do one the Sunday after that. I don't know what yet. And then David will start, I think he's starting a new series about flying, like fear of flying or something. And then I will carry on doing my videos. One thing I've thought is that I might move over my hypnotherapy, my virtual reality hypnotherapy session to the Mind Changers channel, because it makes more sense to be over there now that this channel is just focusing on sleep meditations. So the Mind Changers is, oh, I've frozen on my screen. Nope, I'm back. I don't know. As long as I've got the audio, I'll be fine. Yeah, the Mind Changers is something I set up with Dr. David Lewis many years ago now. We've been trying to work on projects since 2004 of different types of projects, and I've helped him with bits of like sort of advising around bits for his books, all sorts of things. So we've done lots of things together. We went to Dubai, worked on a TV program in Dubai together. I've worked on some psychology research projects for Dr. David Lewis over the years. So we've done lots of different bits and pieces, but it's just the channel where we try and share helpful kind of mental health, psychology type of tips and things. We've had a website for years, but we changed who was running the website, and some bits have stopped functioning properly since we changed who was running it. And so we're not really doing much with it until we can get that sorted. But David has now finished writing a book that he was writing, and so we're both able to now contribute back to the Mind Changers YouTube channel. So yes, Holly has shared a link to the channel, so anyone who's interested in the sort of stuff we share over there, feel free to go check it out, subscribe, click the bell icon, all the usual stuff. And obviously I do share it onto Facebook every time we've posted something. Congratulations on your blog going up today, officially. We've heard mention of that over the streams. And glad to hear more people are listening to the sleep meditations. Let me have some of my water. I feel like everything's out of place here. Don't know why. I feel like this chair isn't quite in the right place. My arm wasn't quite in the right place when I picked up that glass. I think I'm a bit far forward or something. Don't know. I haven't sat here doing this for like 2 weeks or whatever. So in a minute, I'll start asking for some ideas. My hair's tickling my forehead. It needs to be chopped at some point. Yeah, there is. Well, there's not a lot of variety behind me. It's all hypnosis books behind me, going sort of up to there somewhere, and obviously down to the floor. And beside me is all, just to make anyone dizzy, hypnosis books, and that shelf is all hypnosis books as well. But once you get around to the other side of the room, then it starts to move on to books about, well, still psychology and biographies and other bits and pieces, but it starts getting on to other things. Yeah, my shirt is just weird fish, shrimp Floyd classics, and it's like a Pink Floyd type t-shirt thing. Um, let's have a look. Yes, I like all the books I've got around. I don't get enough time to read them all. Yes, you would think that I'd find it easy to know where my chair goes because it can't go back any further because I've got books behind me. Um, I just think maybe I'm slightly further to one side or another than normal or something. Yeah, I don't think of it as having a library. I don't think I've got enough books yet. Um, I think Abby once started counting. Um, we kind of guessed that maybe I've got 3,000 or so books, but we don't know because I've got lots of books in boxes and things that there's no room on shelves for. Um, and then I've got obviously lots of books that are stacked up, and books stacked up that side, probably as tall as me almost, and then lots of other books around. No, what this is resting on is a high chair. I've got a high chair with four big books on top of it, and then the laptop on top of the high chair and the books. It would be nice to have 10,000 square foot expansion. Yeah, I don't think of 3,000 books as a library. But maybe that's because when I see other people's bookshelves, I always think, oh my God, people have so many books. And I get jealous of how many books people have. Yeah, I have literally, well, when I came on air, I moved it. It felt too far away. So I've moved it closer to me. Um, but then I've got the piano not far behind it. Yeah, I like big books too. Well, people I encounter seem to frequently have what looks like a lot more books than me. And so I end up thinking, and when I see interviews with people on TV, like on the news and stuff, they seem to always have far more books than I've got. So I don't think that I have um, that many compared to others. I would say that if I could fill all my walls, not that I've got room to put shelves against all my walls, but if I could fill all my walls in here, then I would say I've probably got a small library. Maybe just if assuming it was psychology books and things, maybe a psychology library. I suspect, well, no, I know I have more hypnosis books than any library that I've ever been in, more hypnosis books than any bookshop I've ever been in. And that's including going in bookshops in Oxford and places that obviously have lots and lots of books. I don't really have a favourite book. Nope, probably have about 3,000 books. If I include ebooks, then I obviously have far more than 10,000 because I have lots of books that I've only got as ebooks because I can't find them necessarily in print. And I've got a lot of my print books actually as ebooks as well. No, I suspect a lot of hypnotists have significantly more books than me, um, especially well known ones or people who go out of their way to collect books. I know I have some hypnosis books that hypnotists like seeing, that hypnotists have never actually seen in the flesh when I've shown them, and they get all excited. Abby worries about the books in this room being too heavy for the floor. But it does also kind of dull the sound as well. So it helps with recording because it's not an echoey room. Some of them, I think, probably do have flesh-based covers. In fact, my most recent addition to my library is a 6-volume lore set of books. I discovered a set of. I'll get on with getting the ideas in a minute, but I discovered a set of lore books. So it's the history. I can't remember the name of it, but it's something like the history of lore, or no, the history of interesting and unusual cases from when records began through to 1815 or something. And it's 6 volumes, quite thick volumes. And what I discovered was that it used to belong to my great 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 grandfather. Um, I found it online, discovered it belonged to my great 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 grandfather. And so I purchased it from America, even though he lived in London, to get it back into our family. So it's got his uh, name and what's it thing that you get that people used to stick in the front of their books, um, with his seal, his coat of arms on every single book. So I'd asked if I could see that. I saw that, and as soon as I saw it, I thought I'm going to get that set back into our family. So that's what I did. Um, and there are really interesting. A lot of the cases are things like witches sentenced to death, and um, people writing books about and self-publishing books about how they don't think God is real, and so they're sentenced to bad punishments for um, saying they don't believe in God and things like that. So there's lots of interesting and weird cases, and then there's things like uh, Guy Fawkes and uh, Oliver Cromwell and all sorts of things. So yeah. So anyway, start throwing out some ideas, words and things that I can use, that I can then create whatever today's sleep uh, meditation will be. If you're a witch, you'll like my most recent The Twins story, I assume. I don't know. Because obviously the Twins story was about twin witches. Mice? not talking because I'm trying to read and write. Difficult to do so many things at once. I actually thought about blind artist as an idea today. I thought, I wonder if anyone would ever suggest that. I thought it would be an interesting thing. Have I written flying down already? Yeah. Hmm. That took up 2 lines to write. Right. I'll start in a moment. There was something I was about to say, and I can't remember what it was now. It was while I was reading. I'm sure whatever it is will probably come to me for the next stream. Oh, yes. I remember what I was going to say. I don't want to say too much because I want to start close to being on time. Yeah, something I've been working on is trying to write my Dragon's Fire stories. So I haven't worked on it a lot, um, just making sure that the world is uh, correct and that I know how I want it to be. Um, with the idea of attempting to kind of novelize the Dragon's Fire stories, um, because obviously I ad libbed them um, back to back, all six of them, and there's the prequel as well, as you know. Um, so yeah, so I thought, let's finally try and make time so that I can do less YouTube, which I need to do to be able to make time to do this. But that way, it gives me some time to write the Dragon's Fire novels, to get them done. I still want to turn them into graphic novels as well, but that will probably cost tens of thousands of pounds. And so I don't know if I'll actually do that or not, just because of the cost of it. My thinking is to try and do the first one and then see what it will cost to create a, maybe sort of uh, graphic comics kind of thing of them, and then maybe a graphic novel or something, whatever. But it's just something that I'm finally trying to get around to working on, because I've been wanting to do it for years and years and years and years, so that I feel I can then move on to doing what comes after. Because as anyone who's heard the Dragon's Fire stories knows, they don't conclude with a conclusion, with the overarching conclusion that started in the prequel. That's still out there. So there's obviously the prequel where the dragons first start appearing. The wizard obviously deals with the ice dragon and sort of doesn't know who summoned the ice dragon and who turned the dragons evil, but deals with the ice dragon. And then in the Dragon's Fire stories, they end up having to deal with a whole bunch more dragons, but they still haven't got to dealing with the person who's been summoning these dragons and controlling them and setting them loose on people. So that's obviously where the story goes, and I've just never got round to doing that. What I find is that all of them are just super expensive. So the prices I've generally been quoted, wherever I've gone for the prices, um, end up being many thousands. So, say I wanted to have a 100-page graphic novel, for those 100 pages costs something stupid like £8,000 to £10,000 to do, when you approach the different kind of illustrators that are out there. So I did think, oh, can I just learn to draw and do it all myself? But that itself takes a lot of time to learn to draw, to do it yourself. So yeah, it's significantly more expensive to find someone that can do the kind of artwork that I'd want, a proper like graphic novel artist, who can then do the graphic novel each page as I'd want it. And it takes them a lot of time, obviously, to do each page and to do each image. Yeah, mine would be stick figures, essentially. But yeah, so what my thinking was if I can do at least a rough version of a novel, I've then got something I can kind of say, right, how much would it cost to turn this into a graphic novel, and just approach different companies, seeing if I can find a company that will take most of the revenue at first, or even most of the revenue most of the time, to try and make it cheaper. So it's whether I can find someone who'll take a risk on it as a project, so that they can make some money out of it. But I'll see. I'll see where it goes. If not, I might just end up having to try and figure out how to pay for it. I know a YouTuber who recently completed his graphic novel, and what he did was he just did crowdfunding with his YouTube channel and said, "I need $30,000 to be able to put this graphic novel together and pay the person, the artist, and the people that are creating the novel and turning it into a novel." And he just kind of said, donate these different amounts for different rewards. And so it was things like, donate $10 or whatever, and that will get you a copy of the graphic novel when it comes out, or $20 or whatever it was, or donate $50 and you can receive a signed copy when it comes out, or donate. So his was, different tiers as a way of getting people to donate money. And he hit his $30,000 budget that he needed to hit. So he knows then, and the people making it know then, there's $30,000 worth of sales that instantly covers the $30,000 that it's cost to make, and they know they've got that then straight off the bat, so it breaks even straight away. So I could do something like that, but I don't think most of my audience here would be that. Most of my sort of 60 whatever thousand subscribers would be interested in doing that sort of thing. In terms of being interested in graphic novels, his channel specifically focuses on graphic novels, and he was writing his own, so it made sense for his channel. So yeah, I think there would definitely be people who would, but at the same time, I think a lot of people would think, you know what, I listen to things, I don't really read them, just because my channel's not the kind of channel necessarily for that sort of thing. So anyway, let me actually point the mic at me. That's at me. So just take a moment to allow your eyes to close. Allow yourself to begin to relax. And as you begin to comfortably relax, I'm just going to tell this sleep meditation in the background. And while I tell this sleep meditation, I don't know whether you're going to drift deeper asleep to the sound of my voice, or whether it'll be to the spaces between my words. And as you just comfortably drift and float asleep, you can just have a sense of a young girl walking through a pine forest. And as she walks through that pine forest, she can notice how tall all the trees are around her. She can smell that pine smell. And as the wind blows a breeze through the forest, she can hear the rustling of the pine trees as the branches rub together. And she can see the occasional dancing shard of light breaking its way down through the canopy to the forest floor. And the gentle sound of birds up high in the trees. And she can notice the sound of her footsteps, the occasional cracking of twigs on the floor. And she can feel that breeze on her face. And while she walks through this forest, she has pleasant thoughts in her mind and a pleasant feeling of comfort and peace. A feeling like living here and being in this pine forest just brings a certain connection to nature, where she feels safe and secure. And she follows a dirt path through the pine forest, then turns down another dirt path. She notices the tufts of green moss on the ground and the dark pine needles overhead, and areas of brown dead pine needles just along the edge of the path. And as she follows this path, the path gets narrower as the forest gets thicker and denser. And that increased density reduces the breeze, darkens the forest, softens the sound. And she finds her way to a small clearing in this forest. A small clearing with just a single house. She walks up to that house. And this is her home, so she enters the house. She sees her parents just milling around inside the house. She can smell some cooking, and she heads to her bedroom. And she relaxes on her bed, and out of her bedroom window, she can see the back garden surrounded by the dense pine trees. And with this house here, she's got a view of the sky. And so she can see how blue the sky is during the day, and then the stars appearing at night. And she wonders what other forests are like. She's heard about forests in other countries, forests of wide, tall trees, forests of white trees, forests of broad oak trees. And in her mind, she's curious what these different forests would smell like, what the bark of the trees would feel like, and what it'd be like to walk through such varied locations. And as she thinks about the difference between one forest and another, relaxing on her bed, she comfortably drifts asleep. And as she drifts asleep, so she begins to hear the sound of circus music and starts to have this feeling of flashing lights, of multiple colours around her eyes. And that feeling of sensing those flashing lights through closed eyelids And the music gets louder and louder. She opens her eyes and finds herself resting on a bench at a fairground. She stands up from the bench and walks towards the different rides. She can see people milling around. She can see children with cotton candy, children running away from their parents to check out different rides, different amusements. And she's curious about a dark hut at the back of the fairground that looks like a ride that's been shut down. But something about it draws her in. She walks towards that hut. And it's dark and quiet around that hut. And it's beyond the rest of the fairground. And as she walks out to that hut, so she can hear the rolling sea rolling in under the end of the fairground. She notices how it's sticking out, almost like on a jetty over the edge of the sea. And she reaches that hut, carefully leans forward, takes hold of the doorknob, opens that door, hears the door creak and squeak. And she walks in to this hut. And the hut's just lightly illuminated from the ambient light outside. And inside the hut, she notices a twinkling of light and colour. And she sees, as she follows the twinkling, that there's a room that seems to have no back wall. And she's shocked by what she discovers and excited by what she discovers. She sees that she can look out from this location over the dark nighttime ocean. She can see stars in the sky. She can see the moon in the sky. And she can see what looks like a long, colourful dragon of light with flowing, multicoloured ears, a long snout, a slight smile, the friendliest eye looking at her, a really long, weaving, winding body with two small front legs, two small back legs that are hooked up while it's flying and hovering. It seems to be moving its body gently to be able to hover there. And she can almost see through this dragon. She can see its whiskers hanging down and flowing with its movement. And as the movement of the body happens, so the whiskers move and flap, almost like ropes hanging from a moving rope swing. Almost like ropes hanging from a moving rope bridge. And in a deep, comforting voice. The dragon tells the girl to climb on, and the girl doesn't know how, and she says this. And the dragon's alongside where the girl is standing. And as she looks at the back of the dragon, so she sees what looks like crystal steps appearing and a crystal carriage appearing on the back of the dragon. And she climbs those steps with a clink and a clunk on each step. She walks into that crystal carriage and sits down on a red velvet cushion. And then the dragon launches itself off into the sky. And she's shocked at how silent this dragon flies, and how she can see behind her that the dragon's tail is moving up and down, undulating, how in front of her the dragon's neck is undulating, but the dragon's managing to keep the movement of where the carriage is so comfortable and still. And she can feel the breeze as that dragon flies rapidly through the sky. She can feel her hair flowing backwards. And she can hear a twinkling sound from the dragon as it turns, almost as if somehow its whiskers twinkle like wind chimes. She notices that this dragon is flying towards what looks like a distant storm. And the dragon comforts her and lets her know it's all okay. There's nothing to worry about. We're flying above the storm. There's somewhere I want to take you, something I want to show you. And the dragon flies towards that distant storm. And the girl's surprised that she can see lightning striking the ocean. She can see the bottom of the clouds lighting up in patches. And as the clouds light up, she can see that there's sheets of rain beneath the cloud. And yet, there's no sound, just a sense of comfort from the view. And the dragon flies up above the clouds. And the tops of the clouds are white and look so soft and comforting. And then she notices that there's a pure white castle up here in these clouds. And the dragon flies her down to that castle, circles around, wraps itself round and lands in front of that castle. The dragon says, "I'll wait here. Head inside." And the girl climbs off of the dragon onto the cloud. She feels like she's walking on a fluffy, bouncy castle. She feels like she wants to just lie down, it's so soft. But she walks, bounces her way to the castle, enters that castle, and finds that inside the castle, the floor is solid marble and echoey, with an almost daylight type of light. And yet there seems to be nowhere that light is coming from. It just seems to be glowing from everywhere. And in the middle of this castle is a grand old oak tree. And there's a woman stood next to that oak tree. And the girl walks over to that woman. And the woman explains that this is the tree of life, and that this tree of life gives life by seeding the clouds, stimulating rain, and as the clouds spread around the earth, so life spreads around the earth. And that the castle and the cloud phase between reality in this world and a different reality, and that there are actually multiple dimensions of reality. And the girl doesn't understand what she's talking about. This woman says there's no need to understand. It's just the way it is. That some things are just the way they are, whether you understand them or not. And then the woman reaches up and grabs some fruit from this tree. And the girl is confused, thinking oak trees don't give fruit. And the woman explains that this tree is a tree of life, and that it's a magic tree, so if you want something, all you have to do is think about it, and it'll produce it. And the girl thinks of the cotton candy that she saw that other child eating. And as she thinks about that, so one of the branches begins to sprout cotton candy, and she can smell that as it starts to grow out of that branch, wrapping around the branch. Then the woman reaches up, breaks that branch off, and hands it to the girl. And then the girl walks with this woman while eating that cotton candy. And the woman walks her through to a library and explains that this girl is the only one who can pass on a very specific message. Because it needs someone small, someone brave and accepting, someone who isn't fazed by the unusual, someone who's happy to accept the reality they see as being real to them. and that this girl, using her inquisitiveness, has demonstrated that she's the one to pass this on. And the woman gets a book and she reads a bit of this book. And she explains that there needs to be a connection between the air, the earth, and the water. And that as time has gone on, this connection has been lost. But with this girl's inquisitiveness, now's the time to reconnect the air, water, and the earth. And that the dragon can help. And the woman writes something on one of the pages in that book, hands the book to the girl just as she's finishing her cotton candy. And ushers her back out of the castle, telling her the dragon will know where to go. And she heads back to that dragon, climbs back into the crystal carriage. The dragon asks if she's okay and holding on tight in such a gentle voice before launching off the cloud and swooping down. She notices that she can see that fair and that the dragon seems to be flying very fast out to sea beyond the fair and aiming down towards the sea. And the girl worries about this dragon flying so fast and down towards the sea. And the dragon says, "It'll all be okay. You're on my back. You'll be fine. Just stay in the carriage." And with barely a splash, the dragon passes under the water. The water rises up around the carriage. And yet none of the water seems to pass into the carriage. And she knows that there were no windows in this carriage. She could feel the air on her face. And the dragon seems to accelerate underwater. And she notices these pulses of water pass by her. And then the girl begins to notice in the deep, dark depths of the ocean what looks like another glowing white building coming into view. And she sees that off in the distance, deep under the ocean, is another glowing white palace. And this palace looks different, but it looks like it's made of whatever the same material is. And the dragon lands by the palace. And the girl says to the dragon, "I can't leave your back because there's water out there." And the dragon says, "It'll all be okay. Just get out of the carriage and you'll be fine." And the girl goes to the side of the carriage. She climbs onto the steps and notices that the water doesn't seem to touch her. She descends those steps to the ocean floor. and notices that the ocean floor she's walking on seems to be dry, and that the water seems to be curving around her. And she walks towards this palace entrance. She climbs into the palace. She worries when she opens the door that the water will go rushing into this palace, and wonders how so much water above a palace, if there isn't water in it, isn't crushing it. But she opens the door to the palace and no water floods in, and she just walks dry into the palace, closes the door behind her. And inside this palace, she sees a woman standing near a pillar of water that seems to be passing all the way up inside the palace, perhaps even out the top of the palace. And in that column of water seems to be a tall coral. And she admires how colourful this coral is, and notices the way it seems to sparkle and twinkle. You can see the movement in the coral. She walks over to the woman, and this woman says, "You've got something for me." And she reads from the book, and then she writes something in the book. And she thanks the girl for her help. And she explains that you're going to unite the three realms and help us to connect again. And the girl doesn't fully understand. And she hands that book back to the girl. The girl doesn't look at what's written in the book. She just takes the book and gets told to head back to the dragon. So she heads back out of the palace, equally as amazed again, how when she opens the door, no water floods in, and as she steps towards the water, it moves perfectly around her, so that she walks totally dry all the way back to that dragon. And as she's walking back to the dragon, she can see the way it's almost see-through underwater, creating a shimmering of light, pulsing of colour. And she climbs back into the crystal carriage. And rapidly that dragon moves off the sea floor and starts heading back towards the surface. And once it reaches the surface, it explodes out of the water, launching up into the sky. And begins to accelerate faster and faster, well away from where she started. She has this feeling like it's heading halfway around the world. And it arrives at a location with mountains. And she worries she's going to be freezing cold. She's still only got her purple dress on. And the dragon says it'll all be okay. And the dragon circles one of the high peaks before landing on the snow. She can see there's a cave entrance high up here in the mountains. She gets off of that dragon, walks through the snow, and is surprised to find that she can feel the crunching of the snow beneath her feet. She can hear that crunching of the snow beneath her feet, but she can't feel any temperature from the snow beneath her feet. And she walks to that cave, and as she enters the cave and begins to descend, she notices that the more she descends, the closer she gets to some underground light that has a feeling of daylight. And then she finds herself in a vast chamber. And in the middle of that chamber is another white palace. And again, it seems to be made out of the same material that seems to emit light. And she walks to that palace, enters that palace, and in the center of this palace, she sees this narrow, tall mushroom. And she can notice the purple patches on the top of that mushroom, the purple streaks going down the sides of the mushroom. And stood underneath this mushroom, she sees a woman. And she walks over to that woman. And the woman says, "You've got something for me." And she gets out that book. She hands that book to the woman. And the woman reads some of the book before writing something in the book. And after writing in the book, she doesn't hand the book back. She asks the girl to help her. And she gets down onto her knees and she starts digging in the mud beneath the mushroom. And the girl gets down on her knees and helps dig with her hands as well. And as they dig, they get their hands dirty. Then she places that book underneath the mushroom. She covers that book over with the mud again. She then waters that location with some water from a pot. And the girl's curious, wondering what has just happened. And the woman says that they've all needed to contribute to that book. And now it just needs to grow and become part of the nature and allow nature to take its course. It's not for their involvement now, but this will connect the tree of life, which is giving the rain. This will connect the mushroom, which churns up soil, which helps spread nutrients, and the coral. And the girl is curious what's going to happen, how it all works. And as she has that sense of curiosity, she begins to see what looks like some precious stones forming in the skin of that mushroom. Then she notices light seeming to emanate from those stones, shining off around the room, multicoloured. And the woman explains that this same thing will be happening to the coral, the same thing will be happening to that tree. This is connecting the realms of the earth, the air, and the water, and connecting the dimensions. But people are so used to the dimensions they live in, they're almost blind to the other dimensions. And yet, nature needs all dimensions. And she explains that it may not make full sense, but the world is quantum. And the girl doesn't really understand. And she sees this flash of light come from the mushroom, almost like a pulse being given off, followed by another pulse and another, almost like the mushroom has developed a heartbeat. And the woman says that the same will be happening in the other palaces. And the girl gets told that she can have a gift for her help, that she can go into the library here and she can choose one thing to take away with her. And she walks into the library and she can see books floor to ceiling. But something she notices is a bowl with some water. And in that water, she sees a single cherry blossom just floating on that water. And although she's got the choice of all these books to choose from, she feels drawn to that single cherry blossom. And as she puts her hand in the water and scoops that cherry blossom out of the water, so the cherry blossom begins to turn into a crystal. She finds herself looking at the most beautiful pink and emerald crystal in her hand. And the woman says, "Great choice, a very wise choice." And the woman takes a pin off of her top. She attaches the pin to that cherry blossom and then attaches the cherry blossom to the girl's purple dress. And she tells the girl to go back to the dragon. And so the girl heads back out of the palace, back up out of the cave. She walks back through the snow to that dragon. She climbs back onto the dragon's back into that crystal carriage. And the dragon launches from that mountain and seems to accelerate rapidly back around the earth, back towards that fair. And as the dragon arrives back at the fair and silently pulls alongside the building she climbed out of, she climbs out of the crystal carriage, walks down the crystal steps. She turns to look at this dragon, sees its friendly smile, sees its friendly eyes, and the gentle way it moves and floats, the way its whiskers blow in the breeze like wind chimes, the softness of this dragon. And the dragon tells her that I'll always be in your heart, we'll always be connected. You've done more today than you realize. And you're going to blossom well. And the girl doesn't understand. And in a blink, the dragon launches itself off and disappears off into the night. And the girl walks back through the building, back through that fair, and walks back to that bench. And then she remembers that she thinks she's dreaming. She had totally forgotten about that. It all feels so real. And then a man walks over and says to her, "You've been there a while." And he holds his hand out. And in his hand is what looks like a little clockwork mouse. And he winds that mouse up. And it starts twitching its nose. It starts walking around on his hand. And it looks so real in the way it moves. Yet it almost looks like it's made of pieces of wood, little pieces of metal. So intricately done. By someone who clearly understands mechanisms. And this person hands her that clockwork mouse. Says, just take a moment to close your eyes. Hold on to that clockwork mouse. And as you hold that clockwork mouse, gently pet that mouse. Comfort that mouse. And as you do, just feel a sense of drifting, floating, and falling asleep. And as she listens to his voice and pets that mouse, hearing the cogs gently whirring around, she drifts and floats and falls asleep. And then can feel the comfort, the warmth of her bed. Can notice the warmth of the sun shining through her bedroom window. And she realizes that it's now morning. She opens her eyes and she sees that clockwork mouse resting on top of her bed covers, on top of her. And she picks it up, almost in disbelief. She winds it again and notices how it moves so real. And then she looks beside her on the bedside table and she sees that cherry blossom brooch. and an old book she doesn't remember seeing before, and a handwritten letter. And she reads that handwritten letter, keeping to herself what she read, treasuring that knowledge, knowing that as the time is right, she'll read through the book. And she wants to share her experience, but she doesn't know if her parents will understand. And she walks through the house, and she can see her dad sitting reading a book in the living room. And she can see her mum outside painting. She heads outside into the back garden, and her mum's there, painting on a large canvas. And she's painting with her fingers, picking up different paint on different fingers. And she's blind and just feels the artwork. And as the girl watches for a while, she notices that this abstract artwork that her mum is painting seems to resemble the dream that she'd had. That at the top are clouds and a glow on one side. In the middle are mountains, and underneath is underwater. And flying right across the canvas is what looks like almost a translucent dragon. And the girl asks about what was painted. And the mother says she doesn't know what she's painted. She's just painting what she feels. That she'd splashed some dots of paint with a paintbrush. She'd smeared some paint. And then, almost getting into a trance, she went with the flow, feeling that paint and spreading it where the feeling took her. And in her mind, she felt like she was connecting with the world in some deep and meaningful way. And the girl began to explain about her experiences, explaining about the dragon and how she thought at first it was all a dream. And the mother had a bowl of water next to her, and she washed her hands in that bowl of water. And she felt that brooch. And as she touched the brooch, she spoke about how she could feel certain energy from it, how her senses of touch and other senses are so heightened that she's sure she can feel something about it, more to it than just a brooch. And the girl explained about the multi-dimensions, about the connection of the air, water and earth. And the mother just took it all in her stride, as if it all made perfect sense. And smiled at her daughter and said your dad would also understand. And the daughter wondered what it all meant. And the mother said, "When you're older, you'll know, you'll be painting pictures like this yourself. You'll be seeing that dragon again, and you'll be discovering more. And there's more for you in the future." And that day the girl went out, appreciating the world around her on a deeper level, curious about whether the dragon is out there somewhere, or whether it's just on whatever place she went in her dream, whether that was the real same world as she's in now, or a different world. From what her mum and dad had said, it sounded like it was probably the same world. She just accessed a different dimension. And that night, she read a little bit of that book, and she could smell from the pages of that book the most beautiful, perfumey smell. She had this sense that somehow that smell is being set up to let her know about future events and future adventures. And as she rested that book in her arms and was gazing at the mouse beside her, she drifted and floated with a smile on her face, comfortably and relaxed asleep.